And then I will share my screen with you. And I already have opened a spreadsheet that we looked at last Friday. It seems like a long time ago. And remember, we had added these functions for average and the auto sum. And now what I want to do is I've done some analysis on this data, but as we know, pictures are a lot more meaningful to people than just a bunch of numbers. So we're going to experiment with putting these numbers into charts. And also just talking about that you don't have to chart everything that's on your worksheet. And you're going to see, first I'm going to kind of chart everything, and then I'm going to go back and show you some different ways of charting the same data to get a little bit more meaningful information. So when you're ready to create a chart in Excel, the first thing you want to do is select the data that you want to display in a graphical format. So I'm going to select cell A7 through F15. Now notice when I made the selection, I did not include titles, like the titles up at the top, nor did I include my summary, my function information, okay, the average or the total. When you're charting, it doesn't make sense to chart the detail and the summary information. Otherwise, it skews the chart, okay? So when you're charting, I always tell people either chart the detail, the specifics, or chart the specifics, or the summary, I should say. Don't chart both, okay? So first I've selected my data, and because I know I want to put something into Excel, I'm going to find charts on my Insert tab. So I'm going to go to the Insert tab, and in the middle of the Insert tab, you will find this chart groups. And there are many different types of charts that you can create. I'm just going to talk about some of the basic ones. So I'm going to go up here to the column chart, or also called the bar chart, and I'm going to click that little drop down, and I'm just going to select this first one, the clustered column chart. And when I release it, you'll notice that I got a chart, and it's an object on my worksheet. And then the data that it's being used is selected over in my worksheet. Now, just like any object in Excel, this can be moved. So to move this chart, I want to get that four-headed arrow, and I can move that chart, or I can come to one of the corners and I can size that chart larger. I can also move that chart to a different worksheet in my workbook. So when I created the chart, two new tabs appeared in my ribbon, the Design tab and the Format tab. Over at the very far right, you'll see a little button that says Move Chart. And when I move chart, I can move this chart to its own worksheet, and I can give it a name. Column chart. And when I click OK, you'll notice I got a new tab down here in my workbook with the name that I had typed in. And now I'm only focused on that chart. Okay. Sometimes people like to put them on their own worksheets. Sometimes they like to have them in the same worksheet, but just know that that is something you can change. Now, when I created this chart, notice that I get a chart title, but it has a very generic chart title. One thing I tell my students is I do not like when I see chart title as their title for their chart. That's like if your resume said your name instead of your real name, okay? So let's put a meaningful title on this chart so we know the type of information we're looking at. And if we look back at the data, this was expenses for 5 years of this coffee company. So to put a title on, I select up in the chart title and I start typing my title. So I'm going to say expenses. Now you may say, well, Chris, why don't I see what you're typing? It's kind of weird, but it's putting it in my formula bar. It's not putting it on the chart yet until I hit the enter key. So don't let that scare you. Expenses for 2015 through 2020. When I hit enter, you'll see that chart title is now displayed in my actual chart. Now, also, as I said, you got 2 new tabs when you picked to insert this chart. The design tab of the chart has different layouts or styles of charts that you can choose from. I'm just hovering over these so you can see the different styles that are available. This one with the dark background is great if you're projecting it like in a PowerPoint slide, but not so great if you're printing it because you'll use up all your black ink. So be careful with that one if you try to print it. Okay. Besides doing chart styles, you'll also notice the chart type. So you could change to a different chart type here if you wanted to, and you see your list of all the different charts. And people spend hours on charts, getting them right for reports to give to management, or creating dashboards so that people can see how their sales are going. And different charts are used and convey different messages. And that's part of what you learn when you study business analysis or data analysis and statistics. Okay. Also, on the Format tab, you will see you have even more commands that give you direct ability to change anything on this chart. So you might have noticed that there's a little plus sign to the right of the chart. When I click that plus sign, I get what are called chart elements. Okay, so let's discuss some of these chart elements. You have the axes. You have a x-axis and a y-axis. You can add different chart elements. So right now, chart title is selected. If you didn't want the chart title, you would just click off that chart element or click on it, okay? It erased my nice title. One that I like is data labels. What data labels does is if you don't have data labels displayed, you'll notice that if you're trying to read, well, how much was remodeling in year 1, you would kind of have to take your finger and follow the chart and say, oh, I don't know, it's about $1,500. by adding data labels, it puts little numbers above the chart so that you can read the specifics. Now, those numbers are very difficult to read right now, but you'll notice to the right of data labels, there's a little triangle. And if I select that, I get different ways of displaying those numbers. Or I can even go to more options. And I can change. I got to make this smaller because sometimes your faces get in the way of my screen here. I have more ways that I can display those data labels. Let's see, inside. Oh, I don't like that one. What other choices do I have? Outside end. I could also even change the font of these. So for this one, I probably wouldn't put data labels because there's just too much information on the chart to have data labels. So I could click off data labels if I didn't want those. When I'm on the chart, you can also do a data table. Let me show you what that looks like if I click that button. Do you see how it puts like a little table at the bottom of my chart so I can see the specifics? Error bars, grid lines are the white lines that go this way or the vertical lines, and the legend is this area down here at the bottom. So those are just different parts of the chart, and those can all be changed. I'm going to go back to sheet 1, and I'm going to make a chart that is a little bit, has less data, but will still tell us a lot of information. So this time I'm going to only chart A7 through F7. Okay, those are going to be my labels. And then I just want the totals that go along with them. So by using the control key, I can select non-contiguous data, okay? Meaning I'm not selecting all of my data, I'm only selecting the name, which year that happened in, and the totals for the year. And this time when I go to my Insert tab and I want to do a chart, instead of picking one, I'm going to click on Recommended Charts and see what Excel recommends. They recommend this clustered column, so I'll click OK. Notice an object appears within my Excel worksheet. I'm going to move it around just so I can see both the data and the worksheet. I can size it and move it. On the Design tab, I can change the styles. Okay. I want to get one. Let me just use this. Which one do I want? Okay. And then I can go to the Format tab and I could select the color. So maybe I'm not thrilled with the color blue, okay? I could have on the design tab changed colors, or I can go to this shape fill button. I can pick a different color here. I could even put pictures inside of those bars. So sometimes I have my students like compare Girl Scout cookies, which ones will be sold, are more mint sold, or the peanut butter ones, or whatever. So they'll put pictures inside here, or you can even fill it with different textures. So like I said, you can really have fun with the data and playing around to get your chart to tell the type of story and the message that you're trying to convey in this chart. Now, in this chart, I have those data labels again, but the thing that I don't like about these data labels is that they don't display with comma separators. So it's kind of hard to read that those numbers because they don't have the little comma separators by them. You know, to say like 16, what is that, 161,900. So again, if I wanted to, I could select on those data labels. I can go to my plus sign and go to data labels. Sorry, keeps getting in my way. Go to more options. And when I go to more options, if I scroll down, you see there's this little number triangle. I can open it up and this will allow me to format my data labels. So I'm going to click that number and my screen is getting so messy here. All right, and I'm going to change this to a number, and I'm going to say I want it to have 0 decimal places. And you see my numbers change in my chart. I could even go to the Home tab and increase the font size of those data labels or change the text of those data labels. So trying to make them stand out more on my chart. So we looked at a clustered column chart that contained a bunch of data and it was a little messy to read. And then I went and I just charted two rows that were not next to each other. And that cleaned up my chart quite a bit. And now I'm going to chart and I'm going to show you a pie chart. A pie chart is, and I just want to get rid of this chart, so I'm hitting delete, just so it doesn't cause all the traffic on my worksheet. A pie chart is good for showing, like, if you have one thing and all the different pieces, how much each piece makes up of the total. So because I'm thinking of a pie chart, I'm going to chart 1 year's worth of information, and I'm going to chart year 5's worth of information. So I'm going to select A8 through A15 because I want those to be the names of the slices around my pie. And then I'm going to hold down my control key and I'm going to select F8 through F, whoops. Hold on, let me do that again. A8 through A15, then hold down control F8 through F15. So I have two different ranges of cells selected. I'm going to go to the Insert tab. I'm going to go to my pie chart. I'm going to choose a pie chart that I like. I'm just choosing a very simple one. And here's what a pie chart looks like. Let's move this pie chart so that it's a little bit larger. And I'm going to move it down here on my worksheet. And I'll scroll down so that you can see it. Okay. Notice we have a chart title just like we did before. And we would say expenses for 2020. This is called my legend. These colors represent the different slices on my pie chart. The expense that is taking up the most money is rent. I can see that very easily as I hover my mouse over that slice of the pie. You see, oh, it's not rent, it's payroll, sorry. Payroll is 62% of my expenses. So I can do something called exploding a piece of the pie. To explode a piece of the pie, I'm going to select one slice of the pie by double clicking on that slice. When I double click on that slice, you see that slice has the little sizing handles around it. There's one right here, one right here, and one right here. And I'm going to use my mouse to drag that slice away from the other part of the pie chart. The other thing, if I was creating this pie chart, let's go up to our styles and see if we like any of these styles. I like that one. I don't like that one. Let's see. Okay, I like that one, not bad. Notice it put data labels that are percentages, and my legends, instead of being along the bottom of my chart, are along the right-hand side. You can further change those items by clicking on that plus sign, and this is how you can control where the legend is located. Okay. I did it by picking a style that had the legend over there and had my data labels, but you can always go in and further make refinements to your chart by using the plus sign in the chart elements. All right, I want to pause for a minute and just ask a couple of questions. Have any of you, and you can put your answers in the chat, have any of you used charts before? Okay, a couple people for stats class, yes. Okay, awesome. Have you used pie charts before? Did you know that you could explode slices of the pie? Okay. Did you know about data labels? Okay. Good. And the biggest thing to remember about charts is before you create a chart, think of the kind of story you're trying to show. What is it you're trying to prove? Are you trying to prove that, oh my gosh, our payroll expenses are out of control? Then a pie chart would be good to do that. Are you trying to show that rent has been increasing? Then you might want a line chart or a column chart. So before you create the chart, think of the story that you're trying to tell and what is your chart trying to show your audience. All right, I am just going to close the chat. And I want to go up to the top of my worksheet. I'm going to get rid of this chart, just again, to make some real estate on my computer. And the next thing I want to talk about are tables. Remember, we were able to insert tables in Word. I think we did that on Thursday night. And it created this little grid for us in Word, and we used the tab key to go from one column to another. And it made creating column data very easy in Word. Well, in Excel, there's also something called tables. And using tables, it makes sorting and filtering and summarizing information very easy. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna select A7 through F15, and I'm gonna copy that data to my clipboard, and I'm gonna go to sheet 2 of my worksheet, and I'm gonna paste that data in sheet 2, okay? From this data, I'm going to create a table. So you can put your cursor anywhere in the range of cells that you want to create the table, and you will go to the Insert tab, and you'll go to the Table button. When you hit Insert Table, you'll get this dialog box that appears. It tells you that it is going to make a table of the cells A1 colon, remember the colon means through F9, and by default, it's recognizing that the first row of the table is a row of headers. When you click OK, you'll see a bunch of things happen in Excel. One, you will see you get these little drop down arrows at the top of every column. 2, you saw your table change colors. 3, you get a new tab up here in the ribbon called the Table Tools Design tab, which has all of these options on it for you to make changes to the table. First, I'm going to look at the table styles. I'm going to choose a table style that I like. Okay, all I had to do was click that drop down in the table styles dialog box. The next thing I'm going to do is make all of the columns wider using my auto fit feature, which we talked about on Friday night. So I'm going to select all of those columns. I just dragged. And remember, you can auto fit a column by either using the Home tab and this auto fit column width, or by double clicking between two columns. Okay, it will automatically size the column to display the widest entry. Now we can see our data very easily. And let's say I wanted to sort this in descending order by year 5. So I would go up to my little drop down arrow in year 5, and I would sort in descending order. and it's going to rearrange all of my data automatically for me. I can also filter. So let's say we talked about sorting and filtering, but now we're doing it in a table. I'm going to come up here and I'm going to say, I only want to see expenses that were less than $10,000. So you see how my list collapsed. The numbers turn blue. I also get a little filter symbol in my year 5. Okay. Tables. Now I'm back in the table and on the design tab, this is a really powerful tool and it works great, is in the design tab, if you click this total row, it will automatically add a row in your table called the total row, and it will total up one of the columns. If you want it to do calculations in the other columns, you select in that column, and you see now I get a little drop down to the side of that column, and I can specify what type of total do I want. Do I want a sum? Do I want a count? Do I want an average? I'm going to do a sum for each one of these. Notice I'm not even writing a function like I had to do when this was just a range of cells. Now, right now it's telling us the total for year 5 is $5,100. Let's take that filter off by clearing the filter. And now you'll see that the total automatically changes depending on how you have this data filtered. So this is one of the big advantages of putting data, instead of in a range of cells, you put in a table. It makes it easy to sort. It makes it easy to filter. And it makes it easy to summarize that data, and that summary row can change. And if I were to change one of the numbers in here, let's say that supplies in year 3 were only 10,000, it automatically changes my total. Now, one thing we talked about on Friday was in Excel, we don't put commas, dollar signs, percent signs. We put the raw number into the cell, and then we use the Home tab to format those different types of numbers. So I'm going to format these numbers here. I'm going to do the comma separator, which will put the thousands in there. And I don't want 2 decimal places, so I'm going to decrease my decimal place by hitting this button twice. Once, twice. Okay. I'm then going to go down to my total row, and I want those to be dollar signs, 0 decimal places. So I have a very nice looking chart, and I can quickly change the sort order or filter my data, or even if I want, change the style of the table that I have. So tables in Excel mean that you actually did an insert table. You now get a new tab that appears called the Design tab that easily you can apply table styles and summary rows to that data that is in your table. There also is a button in here called Convert to Range. And once you've messed around with it in the table, if you want to convert it back to just a normal range of cells, it will do that for you. But now the table stuff is not there. The sort buttons aren't there, the filter buttons aren't there, and so on. All right, so we looked at formatting numbers and dates and text on Friday. We also talked a little bit about borders. So I'm just going to take this range of cells. The borders button is in the font group of the Home tab. And if I click the little arrow to the right of that, I can apply different borders. So let's say if I said I wanted a thick outside border around those numbers. Now you might say, Chris, I didn't see anything change. You have to select off of that to be able to see your border, because when you're selected, there's already a little border around whatever selected. So when you apply a border, let's do a bottom double border along this. Again, I don't see it until I click off that cell, and now I can see my border. All right, there are also some really helpful templates. We talked about templates when we were doing Word, and I brought up the resume template, and some of you actually played around with that. There are some good budgeting templates, and another one that I use a lot is called a loan amortization worksheet. So remember, the templates can be found on the File tab when you go to New. And if I wanted a budget, okay, I could see some of the budgets that are available. And you see some of them: wedding, college, small business. There's a whole bunch of them. So you can play around with those. The one I wanted to show you is called the loan amortization. And this is if you are in the process of buying a house or a car. It shows you your monthly payments, etc. I use it a lot. So let me show you this one. So in this template, it has some values already filled in. So notice here it says enter the loan amount in this cell. So let's say you were buying a car for $20,000. Okay. And they're going to charge you 0.9% interest. Oops. So that would be, I would want to put, it's not 90%, I would want 0.009. Yeah, okay. What is the loan period in years? Let's say we took out a 5-year loan. And we're going to make 12 payments in a year. And the start of the loan, let's make it June 1st. And we're not making any extra payments. So I'm just going to change that to 0. Notice right here, it tells us what our monthly payment is going to be. And it tells us how much interest we are paying on that loan. Like I said, every time I bought a house, a car, I run through this, because what you shouldn't, a lot of people think that the most important thing is the monthly payment, but it's really not. It's how much interest you're paying, okay? how much interest you're paying over the life of that loan. So like I said, this is a template that I use a lot and find it helpful, but there are thousands of templates out there that if you're running a business or you're trying to do something, you can look and at least look at one that's already been done before you start doing one on your own. All right. Let me close that. We won't save it. Now, when we save Excel files, they get saved with a file extension of XLSX. Okay, that's the file extension that that Excel automatically puts on the workbook. There are others. So if I were to go to my file, save as, in this drop down, you will see there are other file types that you can save as. You can save as an older Excel file. The Excel prior to 2003 was just an extension of XLS. You can save as a CSV, a comma separated file. You can save as a TXT file, okay? So on the exam, it may ask you to save the workbook with a different file extension. Under printing, when we go to printing, this looks similar to what we saw in Word. You can change how many copies you want, what printer you're going to. Do you want to print the active sheet or the entire workbook or just what is selected with your cursor? You can print certain pages and you can see over here where things will cut off in your worksheet. If I went back to my worksheet and looked at sheet 1 and looked at file print, okay, you will see that I can get that full thing on my page. You might have to change, this is very common in Excel, to change to the landscape because you have more room across the width of your worksheet. And you also have this scaling option. So if you had a workbook that was just too long to fit on one page, you could scale the workbook, which will shrink up the size of the text so that you can fit all rows or all columns on one sheet. Now it's not going to do anything for this one because it fit on one sheet anyway. But if we had something long, it may shrink up the text so small that you can't even read it. So you have to be careful, but that is an option under printing. All right, I want to do like we did on Friday, a little review just to see what you guys remember. And you can either unmute yourself to answer the question and I will call out who I want to answer the question, or you can use the chat. Okay, so first of all, what are data labels in charts used for? And I will call on, is Misty on the line? All right, Conrad, how about Conrad? What are data labels?
They're telling of the history of the, I'm sorry, data.
Remember, they're used in charts. I'll share my screen here a minute. Remember, and they appear at the top.
At the top of the, I'm sorry, at the top of the data.
Yep. And so they'll put the little number up there, and those data labels can be moved around. Remember, that's considered a chart element, and the chart
Bottom's the legend.
elements. Yep. Okay. Excellent. All right. Next one. Why do we use the control key to select data? And I will ask Norma. Why do we use the control key to select data? Okay, she said in case you want to select specific data. And remember, the control key is when you are selecting rows that are not continuous, like row 1 and row 7 is what we want to chart, not rows 1 through 7. Okay. Can you change the format of the data labels? For instance, could you add a $ or a % after one of those data labels? Vince?
Yes, you have the opportunity with other functions to change, make it look however you want it to look.
Okay. And remember that percentages, you guys, you like 0.5 is 50%. Okay. If you're not good at math, sometimes people have a hard time with that, but you don't want to put in 50 because it's going to multiply it by 100 and then you're going to get like 5,000%. So always put in 0.25 for 25% or 0.5 for 50%. And then use your buttons in this number group to change it to a percent. Okay. All right. Thank you, Vince. Next one. What is a pie chart good for, Latanya? What is a pie chart good for? Telling the percentage, yes. So a pie chart is good when you have one data series, like one column of information that you want to know what each one of these are in relation to its total. Okay, so if I was doing my monthly budget, I would have my expenses as the different slices and a pie chart to say, oh, mortgage is my biggest expense, or college for my kids are my biggest expense. Okay, whatever it is. All right, thank you, Latanya. What is an advantage of creating tables in Excel? Michael. What is an advantage of creating tables in Excel?
Some people are visual people, so just seeing it in numbers, they might not get it, and being able to see it in a chart makes it a lot easier for some people.
Okay, you're talking about a chart. That's excellent. But what about tables? Remember, tables are different than charts.
Well, with the tables allows you to see the, I guess in a column of what you actually can see it versus in a, just looking at it in numbers, you can actually see it as in a picture form.
Okay, so remember that tables, let me just go back to sheet 1. When you insert a table, you get a new, that I didn't want just that. You get a new tab that appears in your ribbon and it makes sorting and filtering easier. You also get the total row that makes it for summarizing data. And as your your information gets filtered, your totals automatically adjust to whatever you filtered on. Okay? So that is tables. All right. This is just for anyone. What is a file type that Excel can save as besides XLSX?
You can save as a .html.
TXT, someone put, yep, HTML. You can do a PDF, okay? You can do, and they use this on the test. It's called a CSV, a comma separated value. So when you get data off of a database, many times it comes in a CSV format, and Excel can read that data. So you can save files as CSVs. You can also open CSVs. In fact, I have one I wanted to show you. If you go to the file and go to open, I have one on my desktop. Let me find it. Right now, it says that it's only opening Excel files. I'm going to change this to show me all files. Okay, now my folder shows me all files that I have. And I want to open up this CSV one that looks like this. And it does tell me there might be some data loss because I brought it in from the CSV, and you probably have to massage the data a little bit when you bring in a CSV. But you might see that terminology used, comma separated file, okay, or values. All right, you guys, tomorrow I'm going to be doing PowerPoint. Tomorrow is, I'm actually going to be combining both lessons of PowerPoint into one. PowerPoint is fun. You probably all used it before when you've given speeches, but we're going to be talking about things like animation, transitions, and inserting stuff into your PowerPoint. On Thursday, I'll wrap it up with databases. And like I said, I want Professor Wilson to come in and just give you a little information about the test. So have a great night, and I will see you all tomorrow. Bye.
Thank you. Good night.